Okay, should be live. Starting up a few minutes early, just because guys here and all ready. So I'm just gonna see if the stream is working okay, and then I will I'll pull him in, and we can get started and see where this goes. Welcome to everybody who is already here. Hopefully, we'll see few more people pop in. I did advertise this time on the main channel and on Twitter a few times. Let me fix the chat here. Okay. All right, I'm going to pull the guy in and we'll see where this goes. So let's just get a little visual representation first there. Now it's atmospheric. We're good. Okay. I'm going to bring him in. Hello?
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Not a whole lot. Oh, one second, my brother's just come in.
Alright.
See you then. He's gone now.
Alright. You sound a little bit far away, but let me see if I can adjust that for you. Alright. I raised up your volume just a little bit.
Okay. I wasn't sure about how my audio would be, because I don't have like a decent microphone or anything.
Yeah, it's good enough. It'll work. So, you commented on the video earlier. We had our little exchange, all in good fun and whatnot. But you wanted the chance to come in and I guess explain your issue a little bit more. So here we are.
Yeah, I took issue primarily with the fact that I thought your video kind of misrepresented what I feel to be the main criticisms of the opening episode of Goblin Slayer. Because
Okay.
I've only watched the first episode and like 5 minutes of the second one, and now I just sort of I don't think it's for me. And I think a lot of the conversation, not just you, I'm not meaning to sort of point this entirely at you,
Sure.
but a lot of the conversation has been dominated by this this rebuttal towards an outrage that I just don't see happening.
I mean, it might be because of the time frame, but when the episode first dropped, it was, in my view, I mean, this is my personal experience, what I saw online was, it was a lot of the quote-unquote outrage, and that was what, prompted me to do the video. I will say that mine was a little late because I had captured all the screenshots and everything, and then I was just a lazy ass and didn't record it for like 5 days. So, it wasn't exactly on time. I didn't really do it in a way to like jump on a bandwagon or anything. I recorded it in my own time. But I thought that, calling it a misrepresentation of the issue, I'm not sure that's fair just because, I was reacting simply to the commentary that I saw. That doesn't mean there aren't valid criticisms of the series, but from my perspective, these were criticisms that I felt were just knee-jerk and not really explaining what their problem was. It was sort of this moral outrage where, the person's like, I don't even want to know anybody that's willing to watch this. It's like, come on, man. It's... I understand that, people have different tastes, but that just seems to be a bit of an overreaction. And I also understand that there's sort of this viewpoint that when you make a video like this, it's like, oh, you're making videos to own the libs and all that shit. It's like that's not really the perspective I look at it from. My style, it's a little bit of the punchy humor. It's a little bit of actual points peppered in there. Some people like that, some people don't, but I'm not going to change it just because it makes people mad.
That's fair enough. I wasn't trying to suggest that you were. It was my initial commenting was primarily because I'd seen this this type of. I'd seen a lot of the discussion around Goblin Slayer as being people trying to respond to, like I said, an outrage that I don't think exists. And your video was just one that I found today, after fuck knows how long, a couple of weeks now, of having seen the same crap over and over and over again.
Yeah,
And
I do admit that, when these topics come up, it does get to a point where you do kind of get browbeaten with it just because of the sheer number of people that, make these sort of commentaries. But, I'm just kind of in my own little corner of the website here, and, what I post is just me. I don't go around like looking at what other people are talking about in their videos and then formulate based on that. It's whatever I see in the time and then decide to reply to or whatever.
um,
So I understand from somebody's perspective how it looks like, just another video in the sand, but it's I can't not make something just because other people have already done it.
I I think you absolutely can. I think if you don't have anything new to add to the conversation,
Well,
then
I think I did. I think I responded to, well, first of all, I made some jokes. So whether or not you find them funny, it doesn't really matter because we could argue about humor all day.
oh,
Um, but I do think at the end of the video, I explained pretty well why I believe that, in spite of people not liking the scene, that it did its job in the sense that it upset people. I mean, that's the whole point. You're supposed to dislike the antagonists, and this series does it in a way where you're supposed to look at them as something that it's okay to want to take out. Hence the Goblin Slayer title.
I I personally don't think that it does achieve that. I think it actually sacrifices a kind of building of its own tone for what I think many people would describe as cheap shock
Well,
value.
here's the thing. I mean, look, I think it's fair to judge an episode in and of itself, but it kind of goes a little bit beyond that when it's like, okay, we're what, maybe 3 episodes into the series now, and it's sort of like this blanket of, this is just how it is. And it's fair that to say that the first episode had weak points. I think it had a few. For one, I don't think what was it? Leaving out the backstories, as small as it was in the manga, leaving out the backstories for the initial party that gets wiped out, obviously makes it so that you don't really get a feeling for what their motivations were as characters. And you can only build on characters so much in the first few minutes if you're going to wipe them out. But that's really all they were ever intended to be, is fodder. You can say that's cheap, but it's part of setting the tone for what's to come.
I wouldn't say it's cheap. I'd say it's lazy. I think you absolutely ought to build upon characters even if they are going to die. That's part of what makes that's part of what creates a dark tone. And if the show is going for a dark tone, which I would assume it is, given that everyone seems to call it a dark fantasy, uh, then it would be it would be wise to actually expand upon uh, simple techniques that generate a darker tone, rather than undermining that tone by
Well,
not even giving the characters names.
to clarify, I personally referred to it as a dark fantasy just because that's what I see it listed as on every website that gives a synopsis of the series. So it was just a
Yeah,
shorthand way to describe it.
that's why I also
Again,
refer to
though,
it as a dark
you know,
fantasy.
again, how much world building can you really fit into a first episode? That's why I feel like it's sort of a knee jerk to assume like, well, the writing's terrible just because there were some weaknesses in the first episode. When if you look at the source material, there was more information. Unfortunately, usually some of that information gets cut due to the time constraints of developing an anime episode, which is it's not necessarily a weakness of the storyteller, but a weakness of the medium.
Right. You said something that I was going to respond to, but it's already slipped out of my mind. um, The fuck. Could you go back? Can we rewind that? I had to
Um,
put.
I mean, I don't remember exactly what I said the whole
Um,
time there, but
yeah. Oof. That hurts. Um, you
if you,
said that. Fuck.
I mean, I said that world build. You can't expect an
That was
insane amount of
right.
world building in the first episode.
I don't think you need any world building in the first episode. I think world building is for. It's a much more long-term goal, and
Right.
really, what your first episode is there for is tone setting. And I think the first episode of Goblin Slayer messes it up entirely. It completely whiffs on
Well,
setting a.
I
a
mean, I think it set the tone that the goblins were the the worst of the worst. But what? All
it's
right. I
not
mean,
really
like, do you
tone
have an
though. That's
example?
establishing an
Do
antagonist,
you have
which
an?
isn't
Well, no. The vile acts that they commit is part of the tone.
right. But tone isn't established by the content of the narrative. It's established by the presentation. Uh, if you want to look at dark content, then you could look at something like Star Wars, where there's a whole galactic scale empire and planets are destroyed. But that doesn't make Star Wars a dark film because the presentation of the narrative is still light.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's fair. But
I think
what like do you have I guess I would ask, I see a lot of people saying, well, it was done terribly, the presentation was bad. I mean, what is a good presentation in that case?
good presentation. I personally think that, so these are personal issues that I have with the show. I think that the character designs outside of Goblin Slayer are incredibly sort of bland and generic. I think what's her face, Cowgirl, is that her non-name?
Yeah.
I think she has an incredibly boring character design. I think uh, the four party members in the first episode have very boring character designs.
I mean,
I
they're
think,
generic. It's like a generic RPG party, and I honestly
yeah,
think that's intentional.
right, but it being intentional, I don't think excuses laziness, and I think the designs are thoughtless.
Well, it's based on it's like loosely based on a Dungeons and Dragons type world, and those are like the archetypes for the classes, and then you can also take into account that this is actually an issue of mine, which is why I threw a joke in about it at the end, is that yeah, they only refer to the characters by class name, and that kind of, I think that's a little bit of an immersion breaker.
Yeah,
It's a minor one in my opinion. Like I can get past it if I enjoy other things about it, but it is something that
yeah,
I find to be a weakness.
that's fair enough. I think for me, it's a pretty significant immersion breaker because it does create, I think, a level of dissonance between the viewer and the character. It kind of breaks that narrative and viewer melding that I think is crucial to a lot of good stories.
Well, I mean, my position was never that it's like the greatest story ever written. It's more of that I just find that when people go into this moral superiority mode about fiction, it's a little bit weird because the standards are very skewed. I mean, we had the guy, and this is just an example. There's countless other instances I've witnessed of this over the years in general. The guy that's like, oh well, I would have preferred if they just chopped the party up without the rape. It's like, well, how is brutally murdering somebody better? I mean, I'm not seeing, if you're against that sort of violence or harm or whatever, why would you be for chopping someone into bits? That's not any less horrifying.
Right, but uh, I think people take issue with the presentation of the rape scene more than they take issue with the presentation of murder, because rape is a much more uncomfortable thing to watch. As a viewer, it's more uncomfortable because, sorry, I'm reading the chat and it's distracting me.
I
Um,
wouldn't do that if I were you.
yeah. um, Where was I?
I mean, unless there's something specifically that you want to respond to, which, it's fair enough. But I think that if focus on it too much, we'll get off track.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything in particular that I want to respond to. Right. So your issue was with people,
kind of having this morality issue of it, like you're a bad person for enjoying this, or this should never be featured because it perpetuates this culture of rape. Like, that's just absurdity. I mean, especially because whether you think it was well presented or not, it's very clear that rape in that world is seen as a horrific act, given the fact that the goblins are all slaughtered. The woman at the end is seen as very traumatized by it. It's not a pleasant thing. It's not something that I believe is there for titillation, and I think a lot of people have thrown that in there as well, and I find that to be a weird kind of projection of what they expect people to get out of those things. I don't think that... Now, look, there's some people with some weird interests out there, so I know they're out there, but I don't think there's a majority of people that watch these type of things to get turned on. It's not... And look, even if there was, it's not for me. I would find it disturbing, but at the end of the day, it is fictional. And you can't really punish somebody unless they act on something in reality.
Right. I think you went off on a bit of a tangent.
A bit.
So, I take issue with the way that you're framing. You seem to... I don't know whether you think it and you're doing this intentionally, or whether you don't think it and you're kind of doing it by accident. But you seem to be framing the criticisms of Goblin Slayer's first episode as primarily a focus on the rape scene.
I mean, I personally did see a primary focus on the rape scene, which is why that's what I chose to address in the video. Again, that doesn't mean that there aren't other criticisms of it out there. See, this is where I think we're missing, because find me the place where I said there's no other criticisms in existence or anything like that. This is what I chose to focus on for this particular video, because it's the issues that I had a problem with. If I had seen other things that I thought were relevant for me to cover at the time, I would have put them in there. The fact, I guess what I'm saying is that the few criticisms that I did receive, and I don't want to lump everybody in together, but to be honest, the talking points were very similar. It was acting as though because I focused on what I focused on, it was somehow denying the existence of the other, and that's not necessarily true.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So it's like at the end of the day, people are kind of criticizing me for not addressing things that they felt should be addressed, and I mean, I don't know how to help you there. I can't. I mean, I could, but I've made the video that I wanted to make. It's like you kind of have to... I feel like a valid criticism would be actually addressing something that I specifically said, rather than just kind of saying, well, because you didn't talk about this, that's my problem. You're framing it the wrong way. It's like, well, no, I'm framing it in the way that I witnessed it, and I did provide the evidence that I saw. One of the things that I saw you said towards the end was that you didn't think it was a good representation because it was from Twitter, but that's where many people share their opinions, given that it's a social media platform. And I don't think the fact that people, how many people liked it or disliked it or tweeted about it, that I don't think that's relevant to the fact that the person that originally posted it is talking about it. I'm not here to present a popularity contest of the narrative. I'm here to respond to it, regardless of whether it's 5 people saying it or it's 5,000.
But sorry, when you make a video tackling a topic, you are showcasing that topic in a way that, as you did it, presented it as some kind of significant issue.
Mm,
If it's
I
five people
mean,
saying it,
it's significant to me
out of curiosity, why?
because I think it's a misrepresentation of what is actually going on, and I felt the need to not only poke some fun at it, but set the record straight on why I thought that it worked. I mean, they're offended by it. That's the intention. You're supposed to be offended by it. It's rape. I mean, you're not supposed to enjoy it. You're kind of twisted if you enjoy it.
I I think we've just had fundamentally different experiences of uh, the people that watch the show. Um, I'm not sure where you found these particular people. To me, it seems like you went out of your way to find examples of people hating on specifically the rape scene.
Okay, well, I'm going to
It's
address somebody in the chat. If you're putting rape in just to get someone to go mad, that's just lazy. That's not exactly what I said. I said that's their reaction to it. The reason that's their reaction to it is because rape is seen as a vile act reflexively. Uh, that doesn't mean the author's just like, well, let me piss people off. He's saying that it's a message of, okay, these are the creatures, this is what they do, this is how vile they are, and there is actually a reason for it. I don't remember if it was mentioned in the first episode, but
it's
if you
not.
watch on, it's a male species. That is their method of reproduction. Now, look, you can think that's a ridiculous concept, and that's whatever. I mean, that's your opinion, but it's not like there's no reason for it all other than just like, I want to see women,
I,
violated.
I'm gonna be honest here and say that I do not believe for a second that the order of events was all male species first, rape second.
But
To
why? I mean,
me,
what? That's not even the first time that goblins or creatures like them have been portrayed in that manner. It's kind of a staple, I would say, of the monster.
wouldn't go so far as to say it's a staple. It is uh, recurring, but it's hardly prevalent enough to be called a staple. I think when we look at the writer of Goblin Slayer and we look at what I think he's trying to achieve, I think he is trying to create something that appeals to quite a young audience that hasn't experienced much in the way of dark and nihilistic fantasy.
I mean,
And
I don't know how, I don't know exactly how you would decide that, but um, I mean, young adult novels are a thing. So, I mean, that
yeah,
would be more of a demographic target type of deal. But I mean, it's just kind of a guess to say that. Well, I imagine that uh, he decided on that secondary. Well, there's no way for us to know either way.
right. There is no way for us to know. You're correct there, but I don't think knowing is. I don't think the author's intention is actually entirely relevant, um, because I what's relevant is the experience of the person watching it, and if the experience of the person watching it is this is aimed at a much younger audience than me, which is what I experienced, then that to me is a problem. Not because I hate people younger than me, but because it means that I I see it as immature. I think it is lacking in depth.
Well, what
Um,
I mean, first of all, children, younger, very young people shouldn't really be interacting with that kind of content. So the maturity
mhm.
argument, I'm not saying just because something is dark that it automatically means you should be an adult to necessarily interact with it, or that it automatically makes you a mature person for enjoying it. But uh, it's not something that I would think targets immature individuals solely.
No, I don't think it is meant to target immature individuals. I think it appeals to immature individuals as an unintended side effect of not understanding how to create a legitimately dark and compelling story.
How is rape relevant to world building? Well, Reeboks, I already explained that because that is one of the methods. That's the method of the goblin's reproduction. Again, you can say that that's a shit feature, but then that would just be like opinion to opinion. I mean, you're saying it's not relevant to. He's saying it's not relevant to world building, but yet it clearly is when that's how the species propagates in that series. If they didn't do that, there wouldn't be any goblins. Then there wouldn't be any Goblin Slayer, and then the series would be over. It wouldn't exist.
I think part of the reason that the all-male thing, I think part of the reason that, to me, it seemed like it was attached as an excuse to allow the goblins to rape rather than rather than the other way around.
I guess my question would be, does there need to be an excuse? I keep seeing, these sorts of criticisms where people are like, well, they're just trying to use it as an excuse. It's just trying to be used as shock value. But like, what is the proper way to portray a rape? I mean, is there a proper way?
That's a good question. And there absolutely is a proper way to portray rape in fiction. It's not how they did it in Goblin Slayer. Goblin Slayer fucks up their rape on so many levels, and the first way they mess it up is by not establishing a dark tone prior to it.
I think it's supposed to surprise you, and it's somewhat vaguely.
That's why it doesn't work.
Well, it's vaguely hinted at, not the rape in itself, but it's vaguely hinted at that they shouldn't underestimate the quest that they're undertaking.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, back to what I was saying. It's lost my train of thought now. What was I saying before that? I've lost my train of thought.
They got the scene wrong.
Yeah. Rape is this very unusual act because it is it's completely inexcusable. And in the mentality of people, it's one of those things that can never be justified. You can justify killing someone. You can justify stealing from someone. If someone murders your dog and you kill them, people will look at it and say, "Oh, well, clearly it was the wrong thing." But
well, I mean, that's
justified.
Yeah,
if
that's revenge. Or
kills your dog and you rape them, like no one's gonna go, "Oh, well, it's understandable because they killed his dog."
No, you probably have a bit of a problem in that case.
And because of rape's sort of unique status, not as the worst crime, but as a crime that is inexcusable, then it comes very much out of the blue when it's used in an attempt to set.
Well, you're saying it's a worse crime, but
I'm not saying it's a worse crime. I don't think it is a worse crime. I think murder is the worst crime a person can commit to an individual. But
yeah,
I think
that makes sense.
Rape has a special kind of inexcusability aspect to it.
I mean, it's psychologically damaging in addition to physically.
And it also is never productive. Not that murder is productive, but
well, there's different types of killing. There's straight up murder, and there's self-defense murder, which is not called murder.
But because of rape's special status, not as the worst crime, I don't think it's the worst crime. It lends itself to being a very poor way to set tone. And I think my problems with Goblin Slayer keep coming back to this, and it doesn't set its tone properly. It would be much wiser, I think, if I were the person directing this adaptation, to have the first episode be dedicated to establishing an actual darker tone, rather than trying to initially establish kind of a light and fluffy tone with very bright colours, albeit a bit muted, but that's an aesthetic criticism. Bright colours, happy-go-lucky sort of generic moe character designs, and then in a matter of minutes trying to turn that on its head for purely shock value, I think it undermines its time, the time that it's trying to create. In the same way that jump scares don't actually make a film scary.
I mean, I think
they sacrifice the actual factor of fear for a sort of immediate, intense shock that is damaging. I'd say, obviously, it's subjective, but I think that overall is damaging to a scary film. It makes a film less scary if you sacrifice your tone for that instantaneous shock. And Goblin Slayer does that, but with rape. It jump rapes you.
I mean, well, it doesn't start with the rape.
No, it doesn't start with the rape.
It shows you that it's progressively going down the shitter rather quickly.
But it all happens very quickly, like you said. And it's not bang rape. It's pretty close.
I mean, I don't necessarily feel like it has to be one or the other. It's a mixture of different styles. It's like, yeah, there's that dark element, but there's also moments of comedy and lightheartedness, which is, I mean, look, that's reflective of. I hate to even say it because, you know, the fiction and reality are two different things, but that's just the way things are in general. And there's shitty, unhappy moments, and there is lighthearted moments. It's a combination of the two. I'm not seeing. I mean, I guess I just don't see it as much of a problem.
Yeah, it's all subjective fundamentally. Like, if you like the episode, nothing I can say is gonna change your mind and make you suddenly.
Well, just because I liked the episode in general doesn't mean I didn't have issues with it, which I, you know, pointed out earlier that I did have some.
Yeah, but I think we can all agree that the CG is bad and the audio quality is bad, but I think there are issues that are more relevant to the rape scene, which seems to be, well, it is what your video is centered around, which is why we're talking about it now. I could drone on and on for hours about why probably not hours, but a fair while about why the audio and the CG is bad, and why.
I mean, I'm not a CG fan myself, but
yeah,
I understand. Unfortunately, I understand their reasoning behind that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, I understand it. It's laziness, as is so many things.
Well, I think it's also cost effectiveness too. Unfortunately.
CG can be quite expensive.
Well, but the anime industry, there's a lot of issues with pay and overworked people and whatnot. So I think, unfortunately, CG kind of lends a buffer for them.
I don't think it's as cost effective as you would initially think. I know it looks cost effective because it looks like dog shit, but I think it's deceptively expensive. From the admittedly little that I know about CG animation and 3D animation.
I mean, it's possible.
I think it's more of a time-saving measure than a money-saving measure, which is what frustrates me, because you'd think if you really wanted to hook people with this opening episode, you'd actually, you'd spend a little bit extra. Even if it is more expensive, you spend a little bit extra. You put in a little bit more work to make it look.
So, this is another thing that I see often. The goblins don't need the rape as a threatening trait. But here's the thing: why can't they have it? Why? I mean, why is that where the line is drawn? Out of all the things, why is that where the line is drawn? You can justify it any way you want with saying, well, oh, it's a different league of act or whatever. But that's the entire point. Everybody knows that rape is, a terrible thing that has fucked up consequences. That's the point. That is literally the point. Now, you can take issue with that. It can hurt your feelings. It can make you feel uncomfortable. But that is the point. It's there to bother you. I mean, it also serves a purpose within the world, but it's...
Oh, yikes. That sounds like it could be easily misinterpreted.
What?
You saying a rape has a purpose in the world sounds like.
It does have a
I'm
purpose in that world.
Oh, in that world. Sorry, I thought you said in the world. It's in like in this world. It's like, oh yes, great. We love rape.
I
I'm
mean,
not saying that's what you were saying. I'm just when you said it, my mind
I
immediately.
mean, maybe I said the, but the context was clear as to what I was referring to.
Yeah. I'm saying that my mind immediately was like, well, it's a bit of a risky statement in the current political climate.
I'm not worried about it. They can clip me and say whatever they want.
You are a bold one.
Yeah, well, I just think that it's, I figure that people are going to get upset regardless of what you say, or regardless of how many eggshells you walk on, so you might as well just speak honestly. I mean, they're going to misinterpret you if they want to anyway, so.
Mm-hmm. Back to Goblin Slayer, though. A bit of a pointless detail. I'm sorry for bringing it up. It was just silly of me.
I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I just think that this guy that, I mean, what, you want to come in here too? What am I supposed to say to this? There are many issues with the first episode of Goblin Slayer, yes, which I pointed out a few of them. Rape is an embodiment of some of those things. No, that is your moral issue with it, which, look,
Well,
everybody knows rape is bad. The only people that
even a lazy technique.
I will go as far as to say that even actual rapists know rape is bad, which is why they try to avoid getting caught. They know what they're doing is fucked up.
Because they don't want to go to jail.
Right, but they know it's wrong and unacceptable in society.
Yeah. Well, knowing something's unacceptable and knowing something's wrong are two different things. But we shouldn't really be discussing the morality of rape. I think what the person you were responding to said is, like,
well, he's one of those people. He's one of those people that's saying it shouldn't be featured. He just said that. He's just like, it could be without. Why? I need a good reason why it should be without. Why does it have to? It's like, it makes no fucking sense.
It shouldn't have been in the opening episode because they tried to utilize it as a tool to establish a tone when rape is not effective as a tool to establish a tone. Rape is effective as a device when you have already established a tone, but when you're doing it instead of setting a tone, when you should be setting a tone, then it comes off as...
Our problem isn't with the rape, it's the use of it. Well, you guys are shit at explaining that, then.
They're having to speak in text. Things are a lot harder.
No, listen. This even goes back to the comment that you left regarding Twitter and how, like, that's a bad way to leave comments. That's fucking bullshit, because that same asshole that Mother's Basement or whatever goes on tangents of Twitter threads all the time. Like, those guys go on Twitter thread rants all the time, so if they wanted to take the time to explain themselves, they could. I mean, I could make the argument that they're being lazy by not articulating their points.
Well, when you go on Twitter and you want to tweet something, generally aren't going on there to write a fucking, essay about your thought. It's like, I did this is how I feel about it, bam, post. It's out there. It's not really a platform for that kind of thing. And yes, some people do use it as that, but that doesn't mean that that's,
Many people conflate moral or ideological arguments with purely technical criticism. There's no technical criticism that's been presented yet.
Hi, the CG is shit and the audio quality is tinny as balls. Not to mention that, like I've been saying...
No, I'm talking to those guys, but...
Okay.
That... Is the audio really bad? I mean, maybe I'm not like an audiophile or something, but...
When I first watched it, I thought it was like there was something off, and then I started reading around some of the Reddit threads, and this guy used the word tinny, and I was like, that's it. And I went back and I watched the episode, and I was like, that's exactly the word. It's tinny. It has this sort of ringy, metallic quality.
I mean, I guess I noticed that with the Goblin Slayer himself.
That's more of a...
But I think that was just because... Isn't that like an effect because he's wearing a helmet?
No, that's a different thing. That is an effect, and that was...
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's not...
But I'm talking about like how it sounds like all of the characters recorded their their
I mean,
lungs
look,
on
this is
microphone
kind of
like
the thing.
Morton and did it in fucking Audacity or something.
This is the kind of thing that I'm talking about, though, where it's like, okay, these people are saying that the use of rape is bad or whatever because whatever the presentation, whatever you want to say, but then it's like, well, then why is the presentation of the murder okay? I mean, you could just. It's like everybody's drawing a different line in the sand.
Right. The difference between rape and murder is that murder can, in some situations, be seen as a productive action. Sometimes it can be
Well, right,
beneficial
but in the
to kill.
context of the goblins killing off that party, that was
Right.
clearly not the intent there. Goblin Slayer retaliating, that's the
Yeah.
that's the murder is justified in this situation.
Goblins are like, even when murder isn't justified, we don't have that same knee-jerk reaction. If someone just kills a dude on the street, you don't have the same knee-jerk reaction as you do to rape because murder has that ability to be justified in some capacity,
But
right?
but
Even if you don't consciously, consider it.
So are you
it's still
saying that
there.
even when the context of the murder is not, even when in context that specific murder is not justified, that unconsciously it's reacted to as though there's the possibility that it is because in some context it's justified, whereas rape is never?
No, I'm saying.
I mean, that's what it sounds like. If I
then I'll try to explain it better. Because murder has that connotation of sometimes being a justifiable or productive action, it holds less of a stigma, and so when it's seen, you don't react in that way because you don't have the stigma attached to it, right? And because rape is never productive and never justified, not that it's worse, because I know someone in the chat was saying something like I was saying that that rape is worse than murder, and I wasn't saying that because I don't think that. But rape is never justified, and so it has that stigma attached to it.
well, I mean, I think justifiable murder isn't called murder. Murder means that you. I mean, the way I take it is that you kill somebody, and it's not. There's not a reason for it aside from some sort of. I would say unjustified personal reason, or I guess in the
what murder actually means is that you killed someone with malice aforethought, meaning you intended to kill them and then killed them.
Right, but that's not it. That's not justified. I mean, if somebody goes up for murder in the law system, they're up for murder. Self-defense, on the other hand, is still killing somebody, but it's seen as justifiable due to the circumstances.
Right. But if we go back to, if we say, have you seen John Wick?
I haven't.
Oh, you're missing out. It's fucking good. In it, do you mind spoilers?
No, I mean, I personally don't care.
It happens right at the start anyway, but John Wick gets his dog killed, and then he goes and kills the people that killed his dog.
Okay, well, now I understand what that meme is about.
Yeah. And it's like, it's technically a worse thing to go and murder those people that killed his dog.
Sure.
But you would have a more disturbed reaction to if you went and raped the people that murdered his dog, because the rape there serves no perceivable.
I mean, I would never personally advocate for that, but I suppose if he did rape them, it would psychologically fuck them up.
But that.
I mean, look, that would be an effect. I'm not saying that's justified by any means. I would never think to do it, but some people are fucked up.
My point is, when John Wick goes and kills them, you are rooting for him because on some level, his reaction is justifiable.
Right. So, and by extension, when Goblin Slayer goes and smashes all the goblins up, you're rooting for him because of what the goblins have previously did to the party there.
Right. Yeah. eh, I
I
I
mean,
think
that's the same sort of logic applied to it.
it's a similar line of reasoning, but I wouldn't say it's the same because there's
Well, I
a
said same
difference
sort,
there.
but no.
Yeah, I think there's too many ideas going on in Goblin Slayer. There's too many ideas that kind of sort of
But in the first episode,
not no, this isn't specifically about the first episode. Um, but I mean, like when I hear people talking about it, I'm hearing the all the goblins are a male only species thing, this thing, that thing, and these things kind of have contradictory um, ideas. When you bring up the goblins have to rape to survive, it puts a sort of moral grey area on whether or not they are actually evil, right?
well,
Um,
I mean, if you ignore the context of the fact that they're basically an invasive species that just kind of kills and pillages at their own discretion,
the
I
introducing the all male aspect introduces an interesting possible moral quandary, and then the fact that they're actually just fucking evil anyway undermines it. Right? You could have the possibility of good goblins
well, there
that
that's even
show
addressed
towards.
right in the first episode where the just before he goes and kills the goblin children, the priestess there, I forgot the exact line, but she says something to the effect of, "Aren't there any good goblins?" Or "What if there was a good goblin?" And he explains, "Well, even if there are, I don't think it is a
I
defense
believe
because there's not enough, or they're the only good ones are the ones that stay in their holes." I
yeah,
think was the line.
that's the line. But that undermines it undermines the possible moral uh, grey area of. This sounds so weird to say. It undermines the possible moral grey area of infanticide. um,
Well,
because
I mean,
if
they're not human. It's like that's sort of the disconnect. They're monsters, so you don't. I mean, look
okay,
in
if
the
they were
series, the priestess obviously does view that as, oh, this is a defenseless child. But I think as a viewer, you're not in that world. You're not, monsters don't exist, so you still have a level of disconnect between monster and human, where you're like, well, it's a creature.
yeah, but if they were baby chickens, would it be justifiable to just kill all of them right then and there because
I
there
mean,
was a
do
fucking chicken
chickens
attack?
do chickens pillage and rape? If they did, those specific chickens, yeah, it'd probably be safer to cut the problem off at its root.
But if, okay, say 90% of chickens pillage and rape, and you have there a nest of 20 baby chickens,
Sure.
is it moral to kill all of those baby chickens,
Well, I think it.
knowing that there is a chance that a few of them could grow up to be upstanding members of chicken society?
I mean, I think at that point it's less about the moral aspect and more about survival instinct. That's sort of where nature kicks in and says, yeah, there's a possibility, but more often than not, this is how it goes, and we have to do what we can to keep ourselves safe.
Mhm. But my point in bringing up uh, that scenario was that there's kind of an interesting moral aspect there. You could have had the possibility of a good goblin. You could have had
I
that be
mean,
a morally great action, and then
well,
they choose to immediately undermine any
but
kind of moral complexity in genocide.
I mean, look,
Genocide should always be a morally complex thing. You
that's
should.
that's fair to say in the context of maybe the first episode, but the series isn't even complete yet. I mean, how many? I don't know how many volumes it's in. What, it's like 7 in the light novel or whatever. I forgot exactly, but it's not over yet, so we don't exactly know if there's still going to be a situation where a so-called good goblin pops up and what the ramifications of that would be. That's sort of just kind of extrapolating off of what we've seen so far.
uh,
Which, I mean, fair enough, but like I said, we don't know for a fact. It was mentioned, so there is the possibility that at some point the story will address that.
Uh, I, I don't think personally, I don't think Goblin Slayer is smart enough to address any kind of moral complexity.
I mean, I think it's a little, and look, maybe this isn't intentional, and maybe this is the way that I look at it, but I think it's just a little bit smarter than people give it credit for, and not because of the goblins, not because of the dark aspect, but because of the character of Goblin Slayer himself. You can say, I've seen people say, well, he's boring, he's just there to be a badass. Maybe, but you also have to take into account the fact of his background, and really what I see is like this socially awkward guy that has no idea how to interact with people normally, hence the awkward one word answers and inability to crack jokes and stuff like that. There's a scene later on where he actually finally makes a joke once he gets a little bit more acquainted with the party that he ends up traveling with, and it's like a huge shock. So what I kind of see is this guy that's kind of like lost his mind due to his past, and he's hell-bent on killing all these creatures. And he sort of, as he goes on, in spite of still hunting these goblins, he gets closer to these people and still kind of learns, how to just be a normal person again in some regard. That's just sort of my take that I've gotten from it so far.
Mhm. I don't think any of that comes across in the opening
No, maybe
episode
not in
of
the
it.
opening episode, but I think as it goes, there's not much. He shows up right basically at the end of the episode, so there's not too much that can be done. And I think that sort of leaves a little bit of mystery leading into the second one. It's like, okay, this dude showed up and just destroyed everything. What's next?
I watched the opening bit of the second episode,
Okay.
because I try to not judge anything on one episode. As much as I disliked the opening episode, I generally try to um, I try to give things as much of a chance as possible. Um, but I only managed to make it through like 5 minutes of the second episode because I was just gobsmacked
I mean,
at.
honestly, I'd have to watch it again. I don't have it completely memorized or anything. Um, because in
Let's just
between
say,
watching the episodes, I went and like read a decent portion of the manga too, so it's like a bit mixed.
was the manga the original or was the light novel the
The
original?
light novel's the original. The manga started a few months after.
Okay. Um, yeah. The second episode opens with some utterly gratuitous fan service shots
Oh,
that
okay. Now I remember. I know what you're talking about.
that are just bizarre, um, and completely juxtapose the episode previous. I um, I know I've said the word tone like so many times. I'm gonna go to sleep and I'm just gonna hear tone ringing in my head. But I think the biggest problem with Goblin Slayer is that it is completely tonally retarded. Um, it has no idea how to establish a tone or keep a consistent tone. It's doing
I
the
I guess I'm not really seeing how. Like, all right, I'm not a quote unquote fan service guy. I can tolerate minimal amounts of it, and that's fine. But shows that are just like specifically geared to that don't interest me, so I don't watch them. But
yeah.
in, I mean, what is? I guess I fail to see the issue sometimes that people have with like, all right, what is the problem here with portraying this attractive woman in this scene? I mean, I don't know.
So someone in the chat just says fan service is bad now. No, fan service isn't bad, but when it immediately is like comes just after a violent rape scene and infanticide and all that fucking garbage, it is tonally inconsistent. If you want to have a show with fan service, that's fine, but there's an element of like you have to have a level of self-awareness, right? And this, you mean next fucking episode, not right? It's literally right after, right? That's, if you watch the episodes back to back, it's literally right after. Um, and when you're writing a show, you have to be aware that people are going. Fucking hell, this guy's retarded. When you're writing a show, you have to be aware that people aren't necessarily going to just watch it week by week. They're going to watch it. Um, they're going to binge watch it as well. They're going to watch episode after episode after episode. That's how a lot of people consume media, and that's why
Sure, but
right next to each other.
but I'm not sure that I would take into a. I mean, if I was personally developing a story, I don't really think that I would write it based around the way people were going to choose to watch it. That's sort of, I don't know. That just seems like, I understand that when you create something, there's inevitably a target demographic of some sort, but for me, I prefer a story that is created more organically rather than based around what they perceive the viewership method to be.
I think it's absolutely crucial that people do it. um, I think if you're utilizing a medium, you have to be well aware of what the way that people consume that medium. It takes a little bit of effort to understand how people might consume what you're what you're creating, but
Yeah, but then that sort of goes to make it sound like, well, any creator that doesn't really do that is sort of I don't know, missing an
lazy.
element. They're not up
Yeah,
to
they are.
par in some way.
They're being lazy, or they're
Why?
just
Wait. They're
not
being
knowing.
lazy because they're creating something that they want to create, regardless of what the reaction may be.
So are we not talking about um, how people might consume a product?
I mean, if they have a problem to the extent that they expect authors to bow down to their every demand, I've got a couple dicks they can consume.
Do you not think it would be productive for people creating art to be aware of how people may consume that art and then use that
But being
information and
be
knowledge to produce something better?
but you're saying it's inherently better just be like that goes to say that it's inherently better simply because of the way that the audience consumes it. I disagree. I don't think the audience is always correct. I mean, clearly there's mixed opinions on the show. Who would you listen to? Some people are like, Goblin
I'd
Slayer rocks,
listen
it's fine as it is. Others would say
I'd
Goblin
listen to
Slayer's complete
myself.
fucking shit. Others in the middle say, well, it's got its problems, but it's still a pretty decent show. So in that case, who do you listen to?
I listen to myself.
Right. So why wouldn't an author listen to themselves?
Uh, I'm not saying they shouldn't listen to themselves.
No, but you just said they should listen to the crowd.
No, I didn't. I didn't say they should listen to the crowd. I said they should be aware of how they are, like how it will be consumed. Presumably, if they're making something, they are making it with the knowledge that it is going to be consumed.
Sure.
Why would you want to make something and then hamper the experience of those consuming it by willfully ignoring the way that they are going to consume it?
Because I don't think the way somebody watches a TV show should take affect the like it shouldn't affect the narrative of the story. Those are two
So
separate things.
you don't think that, say, TV shows should be serialized? You think that there should be, scenes should just be cut off halfway through the 23-minute episode? Like TV series should be made as massive fuck long movies and then just cut into arbitrary
No,
23
those
minute
are
part
those are
ones.
different. Those are different forms of presentation, but that doesn't necessarily mean that because I mean, think about it. This was a light novel first. It didn't have the
Oh, yeah,
intention
yeah.
to be an anime, so that came later on. Obviously, there are some sacrifices or liberties that have to be taken when adapting it, but the core message of the series should still be there, or the core narrative of the series should still be there.
Right. I don't think gratuitous fan service shots are a cool
I mean,
aspect of the narrative.
it was there though in the original.
Yeah, but
And it flashes right by in like what, a couple seconds. So I'm not sure I understand the I don't know, the damage, I guess.
it's not damaging. It's just like I said, it's demonstrative of the fact that the people that are making the adaptation aren't really they're either not thinking about it, they're either not thinking about how their adaptation will be consumed, or they're thinking about it and they don't care, right?
Right.
They have to be aware that the binge viewing of these shows is not only a way to watch it, but will over time be the primary way that people watch it.
Well, then in that case, why would they even serialize anymore? I mean, wouldn't they
Because
just, I don't know, wouldn't there not be like that half hour limit anymore, and it would just be, I don't know, maybe why not an hour? Why not 2 hours? It's a
because
binge.
20 minutes is a generally pretty convenient amount of time for most people. Like even with binge watching, you want to have convenient spaces to actually go and do some other things, like get
I mean,
snacks or
I mean, I would
be with
personally
people.
argue that we're in an age where you could pretty much just press pause at any time you want. I personally
Mm.
understand, having grown up in the era when it was a half hour or 20 minutes, then you had to wait a whole entire week before you saw the next episode. I do understand the value of the serialization, but now we are where we're at, and you can just watch whatever you want, whenever you want, pause whenever you want, rewind, fast forward. I mean, if you even missed an episode of something back then, before DVR, you couldn't even see it until they did a rerun.
Yeah, this isn't being made back then. This is being made today, um, with access to things like Crunchyroll and
Crunchyroll.
everybody's everybody's favorite anime streaming site.
Yes.
Um, do you know if they've? No, never mind.
I mean, you can ask. I don't know what.
I was wondering if you knew whether or not they'd added the disabling. They've allowed you to disable autoplay on the new HTML5 player yet.
I don't know. I gave up on Crunchyroll quite a while ago when they started the whole releasing games that were censored and not really giving a shit. Going as far as to tell their audience, well, you should just download the Japanese version.
Would you say, you know, Yaha fiddle dee dee, or
Well, I think that there is a difference. I mean, I think I see where you're going with this, but I think
I'm not going to morally judge you if you
no, no, no,
pirate
no.
stuff.
I'm saying
I pirate stuff. I'm just asking.
Oh no, you were talking about pirating. I thought maybe you were gonna try to like point out that we were just talking about listening to audience versus doing what the author intended. But I was gonna say
No.
this is a little different because that's a product that's already finished with all the contents there, and their job is simply to translate it. But what they did is they removed a part of the original product and then brought it out to the audience. So that's it's making a
Um,
change. Pirating, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to fund a website that decides to not only censor products and like insert this sort of uh, ideological spin in some cases. This the talking down to the consumers type thing is just overplayed. I don't need a company to tell me what is and is not acceptable. And in addition to that, they're now using the funds that are supposed to be for helping out the anime industry and translating anime series, and they're going and they're funding their own little pet projects with these weird, I don't even
is it the High Guardian Spice?
yeah, I mean, and look, people are saying, well, it's their company, they can branch out if they want, and yeah, they can branch out if they want, but I think it's the wrong choice because nobody's really asking for that, or if they are, I don't think it's the core audience. The core audience of Crunchyroll is there for anime. But I mean that's a little bit of a different topic. But as far as pirating goes, my thing is usually like, yeah, I'll watch some things downloaded, but things that I like, I will buy in some capacity. So
Mhm.
I mean, I don't feel guilty about it. Other people may feel differently. Other people may say, well, at the end of the day, you're still stealing. Sure, I agree, but I do purchase the things that I want to support.
Mhm. I do the same thing. I'm not going to get on my high horse about that.
Well,
On
there's a lot of people that argue about things like that, and it's a
yeah.
divided issue. But I, I think it's not as simple because to me the streaming services they don't provide as much as they say they do to the original creators. I always see this one Crunchyroll employee go on and on about it, but how they're so helpful, but they don't really ever show any numbers or anything. So I don't know.
Mhm. So I'm just seeing something in the chat asking how he feels about Berserk.
Sorry about that sound effect there. That was
It's all right.
Streamlabs notification.
Um, what do I think of Berserk? What do I think of Berserk? Crikey. I've not watched a whole lot of Berserk. And I'm sure this is a reference to the Casca rape scene.
I
I
heard a lot about that in the comment section, but honestly, I've never seen it myself.
Yeah, I've not seen it. Um, or maybe the rape horse. I'm not sure. I haven't watched Berserk, so I can't give you a super solid breakdown of my thoughts on Berserk. For all I know, I might watch Berserk and go, "Well, that was a badly done rape scene as well." But I can't tell you. I think there's a good chance I'd watch the Berserk rape scene and think that it was well executed. From what I've heard, it comes quite late in the story and isn't used as a time setting device, which is a good start.
Right.
But I can't comment on it really.
Um,
I see that I see a lot of people. This is something that I see a lot of um, saying. Oh, people complain about the rape scene in Goblin Slayer, but don't complain about the rape scene in Berserk. Such hypocrites. And it grinds my gears because it's like that there are two different rape scenes. If people are complaining about one but not the other, uh, surely,
maybe they have a reason beyond rape. Is that what?
yeah,
Yeah. All right. I mean, yeah, fair enough.
when people are actually taking issue with the way the rape is executed, and it's not executed like that in the other, and so taking issue with the one in Berserk because it was better executed. I've explained why I think the rape scene in Goblin Slayer. Shit, I'm about to fall asleep any minute. I've explained why I think the Goblin Slayer rape scene is poorly executed. Like,
Do you have? I mean, I don't know how much time you have or how much time you want to hang out, but I do have a buddy of mine that I guess he probably has a couple questions for you. I'll completely,
oh,
back out because I don't want to make it seem like a tag team or something like that.
that's fine. I
So
don't mind answering questions.
all right, I'll pull him in and I will go a little bit quiet. So
Okay.
Necro, you're on the air, buddy.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Yep, I'm here.
All right.
Do I need context or what you got going on?
I mean, I thought you had something, which is why I pulled you in.
Oh, I mean, I have a million things, so I'm still struggling to understand. Um, what's the thing that what's the things that you're upset about in Goblin Slayer? Because let me go ahead and just throw this out here. Goblin Slayer is a show that's not meant for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And if everybody thinks that it's for everybody, then that in itself is a retarded statement. Because Goblin Slayer isn't meant for children, and it's not meant for people who are faint, like they can't handle that kind of stuff. I get it, but what is your vice with Goblin Slayer? Help me understand.
Right. I have a bunch of problems with Goblin Slayer. I think the visual direction is very bland. It doesn't do anything interesting with its camera work. I'm a big fan of creative cinematography, and on that front, I find Berserk, not Berserk. Was I saying Berserk that whole time? I find Goblin Slayer to be a huge letdown. In that front, I find the character designs outside of Goblin Slayer to be quite generic and uninteresting. I think the general aesthetic contrast tone that I think it's going for in quite a substantial way. I have mentioned that I think the audio quality is really poor and that the CG is really bad. I also think the OP is fucking awful.
Well, you can skip OPs. That's only a minute and 30 seconds. Now, let me ask you this then. What are your favorite shows? What are some of your favorite anime that you watch?
Okay. My absolute number one favorite by a million miles, Ava, Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Okay, let me go ahead and stop you there, because Evangelion does nothing truly different, and it's about as bare bones as you can get, and it's only rated just a little bit higher for going off of aggregate scores from X amount of review sites. It's not that much higher than Goblin Slayer. What's different about Goblin Slayer and Neon Genesis Evangelion? Because sure, back in the 1990s, we had a lot of different techniques that we could work with, and I will give you the point that Goblin Slayer doesn't do anything unique, but not everything that is different has to be unique. So Neon Genesis Evangelion is supposed to be about saving the world from essentially aliens. They just call them angels, right?
I would disagree with that statement.
Well, I mean, they're technically aliens. They just call them angels, and they're trying to.
I wouldn't say that that's what it's about, though. I would say that it's about one person's journey of self-identification, self-discovery. It's about a young boy that is wrestling with feelings of depression and anxiety and trying to find his reason for living, and ultimately coming to the conclusion that even though he is depressed and he is sad, and he finds that for himself it can one day be better, and he finds that hope where he didn't used to have it. That's, to me, what Evangelion is about.
Okay, now how is that different from Goblin Slayer? Because everything you just said is exactly what Goblin Slayer is. He watched his entire village get murdered by goblins. He watched his sister get raped from beginning to end by goblins. And now he's he's struggling with himself because he is depressed, and that's why he doesn't open up to people. And as Scratch Point pointed out earlier in the stream, he cracks a joke and it just throws everybody in the party off guard. So how is this any different from Neon Genesis Evangelion?
Okay, so there are.
Outside of the cinematography and it being the super high production value, which even the creator of Evangelion already said he wasn't really worried about any of that, the other stuff. He just wanted to make something that looked cool, and that's where we get into artist intent, where people just want to make something that looks cool and be cool. But how is that different? Just between the characters.
So, between the characters, did you say?
Yeah, because it's because both of these characters have an emotional staple in both of these worlds. So Shinji is feeling depressed, and he's trying to constantly get approval from his father, who just doesn't care about him. Goblin Slayer doesn't have any family because they're all dead. Shinji's parents, pretty much to him, are dead. His mother is, spoiler alert if you guys haven't seen this show for,
don't say almost. I know what you're gonna say. Don't spoil it for them, because it's such a good show, and everybody listening can watch it for themselves.
They know it's about 20 years old. It's pretty much his mom is the robot, but she's dead. But the whole point is that they both have these emotional conflicts within themselves. That's why I know you didn't get to episode 2 because that would be.
I watched the beginning of episode 2 of Goblin Slayer.
But later on in episode 2, as they're dropping more exposition for Goblin Slayer, they are talking about how the one girl should not be really involved with him because he's just a broken human being. Shinji essentially is broken, and he doesn't figure anything out until the very end. That's why he already masturbated over a comatose Asuka, and that's why he's still as broken as he'll ever be. He doesn't really change. He just manages to kill more angels.
Well, he does change, and you see him. He changes throughout the entire series, and a big part of the series is about how us meeting different people changes us, right? So after he spent some time with Misato, he's become more confident and outgoing with the people at his school. After he spends more time with Asuka, he becomes more self assured and then confident in himself. He feels like he can actually, like he finds some self worth and some ability to stand up for himself. So I'd say he does change throughout the series, and
Okay, and
finds
that
it.
could be related to Goblin Slayer too,
Yeah,
because
well,
before he met up with the party and before he met up with the healer, he was doing everything by himself. And now that he has people that he can defend or people that he works with, that changes his entire outlook on how he slays goblins and how he shapes his future going forward. I mean, I getting into Goblin Slayer manga or the Goblin Slayer lore, he he's not very self-reliant. He needs other. I mean, he's kind of self-reliant the entire time before Goblin Slayer begins, but when he starts to go and kill goblins with the party, he needs their help more than anything else. So this is I'm just trying to show you that there's parallels between the things that you're talking about. And sure, we can have valid criticisms about the camera work, which Neon Genesis Evangelion will knock it out of the park every single time versus Goblin Slayer. The CG, you just get over it because it's outsourced from Korean companies. They even have it in the credits. But when we're talking about how the stories themselves are constructed, Shinji never changes and Goblin Slayer never changes because they all have one goal in mind. They just, in this case, Goblin Slayer wants to just kill more goblins, and that's what he wants. Shinji just wants to be accepted, and that's what happens at the very end. So he achieves what he's looking for. They're the same character.
um, right, there are parallels between the characters. I don't think that makes sense. I certainly don't think that having similar characters in the protagonist or similar arcs in the protagonist's role means that one can't be better than the other. I think Goblin Slayer, I can't tell you much about Goblin Slayer's arc because I've not seen it. I've watched one and a bit episodes because I thought it was crap. I thought the technical aspects of the show were crap, and that's what I'm going off when I say that I think it's a garbage show, and I think it did an awful job establishing its tone.
Okay, now that's getting into the part that I want to get into, the tone and the content of everything that's in the first episode. So in the first episode, if you have never read the source material, then you'll never know the backstories to these characters. Have you at least read the first two chapters of the manga, or was that just too much for you?
No, I have no interest in reading the.
Okay, so let me go ahead and just let me reel this back a little bit. So in the first episode of Goblin Slayer, they introduced to you three party members alongside the healer. Okay, so with those three party members in the manga, it's in the first two chapters. They establish who these characters are. They don't give them names. They just say, "Hey, here are three new adventurers," and then they give them backstories, so that way you know exactly their background. So the swordsman guy who has the long sword, he dies because he has a sword that is too long. Now they give him a backstory of just being he's wanting to be the best. That's just he's that main character. He wants to be the best. The one mage who can shoot fire, she has a backstory of being one of the best sorcerers in the academy. They gave her that backstory too. They kind of mention it in the first episode, but in the manga they actually show that stuff where she's in the academy getting her graduation papers and things like that. And the fighter, the one that actually gets raped, she is training with her father, and then as she gets better, she's learning a lot of stuff. But he dies, and she uh, wants to become an adventurer. That's just what she wants to do. So they have characters that have backstories. It's just when you're looking at it from an anime only position, you're like, oh, these are just throwaway characters, and we're probably never going to see them again. And you might be right, but even then, the content of the episode relies heavily on showing you in this world that is fictional, it's kind of like a role-playing game. D&D style. Like they talk about experience points in the third episode. I know you're not going to get this far. They talk about experience points in the third episode. There's people that post quests as though they do, and these characters are they're in this world. And in the first episode, they establish that the goblins are inherently evil because they rape and they murder and they steal. So I'm not understanding what your true vice is with the content. If they're giving you the story up front that these antagonists are inherently evil and the Goblin Slayer is here to murder them for the greater good.
I'm not confused by the premise. I find the premise very simple. It's not a complicated premise, and it was, communicated in the first episode. What wasn't communicated in the first episode was why I should give a shit.
Because they are murderers and they're rapists, and that's why Goblin Slayer is here, is to kill them. He's doing a necessary good for the land.
Right, but why should I care? Like, it doesn't establish why they're... It's not the problem, but it's emblematic of the problem, is that they don't have any names. Like, they aren't characters. They aren't, like, at the end of episode 1, you don't know anyone, right? You don't even begin to know anyone. You've seen some faces, and you can maybe recognize some faces, but it's...
Here, I'm going to go off track a little bit. Have you ever heard of an anime called Guy Ray Zero? If no one's heard of this show, go watch Guy Ray Zero. In the first episode, the quote main characters in that first episode, they all die.
How do you spell that, sorry?
It's G-A-R. Here, I'm just gonna type it in the chat. I'm gonna link it. Can I link things? It's hang on. I'll just type it. Guy Ray Zero. It is a show that is a prequel to Guy Ray, which is it's supposed to be about this girl who exorcises demons. It sounds very bare bones and cliche, which apparently cliche is a dirty word. Better not use that one. But in Guy Ray Zero, the first episode, the main characters, everyone dies because you assume they're going to be the main characters. They all die. They have names, but you don't care about them afterwards. They are throwaway characters that have names and they have like lives outside of, killing demon ghost things. All I'm saying is, if this were as big as an issue of, well, they're just making characters that you don't recognize, you don't remember, then everybody already knows that they can call her healer. They know that there's the fighter. They know that there's the sorceress. They know that there's an elf, dwarf. They know that there's a dragon. Like, these are things. There's no spoilers in Guy Ray Zero. I mean, they're not the main characters. They're like supporting characters. They all die. But I'm just not understanding, if they are throwaway characters and no one remembers them. We're only in the first episode, and we're trying to establish a world where the goblins are evil. We haven't even sunk our teeth into what else is possibly out there, because as we go on, they in episode 3 they're talking about a demon army that's supposed to be invading. Goblin Slayer doesn't care about that. He cares about killing goblins. So we know that there's stuff there. All I'm saying is, this argument of yours, it doesn't make any sense if we're talking about, well, the world building or the characters, we just don't know them. Well, that's because it's only the first episode.
My problem isn't that we don't have an intimate understanding any of the characters. It's that they're characterless, right? If you go onto the My Anime List page of Goblin Slayer and you look at the cowgirl character, her fucking bio is literally just childhood friend of Goblin Slayer. Like, there's nothing to any of the characters at this point in the anime, and that's a problem.
Okay, so but here's the thing. My Anime List isn't the end-all be-all on every single character.
No.
Like, it doesn't have their entire biography. All I'm saying is, this, like, I could go in a million different places. They have a wiki for this kind of stuff. But if we're going to go by what the definition or what these character traits are, reading the manga or reading the light novel will give you the information you need. Like, sure, she is a childhood friend of Goblin Slayer, yes, but there's more depth to her than that. Like, they grew up together, he knew their parents, and they all lived in a village together. And one day, when the goblins attacked, they all got murdered and raped. Now, as you read through the story, they actually give you more backstory. That's why the first episode is not a good gauge. And these anime YouTubers, for some reason, think that because one episode happens, that's immediately it. Now, I'm not saying that if you can't like judge from the first episode whether you think it's going to be good or not, then I can't tell you anything to change your mind. But I'm already 3 episodes in, and they've already dropped enough exposition to keep you going. And then if you're going to read the manga, then they give you more information. It's just like how people used to compare books to movies and how you can only put so much into a 2-hour or 2.5-hour movie. And then the books go more in depth of how the characters are supposed to feel inside with inner monologue. That's how this is.
Okay, sorry. Some people are saying some dumb shit in the chat. They seem to be under the impression that I'm complaining that we don't have a deep understanding of the character. I explicitly said the opposite. I don't care that we don't have a deep understanding of the characters, but what you need is a bare bones understanding of the characters, and the characters in Goblin Slayer are completely characterless. They are non-characters.
In what regard?
I'm not asking to learn anything complex in the first episode, you bombad.
Don't worry about the chat. That's just me and you. Like, I'm looking at the chat, but I don't read the chat. But what about the characters that make them not characters?
Because they have no defining traits. Like, what can you tell me about the cowgirl?
The cowgirl. I mean,
what can you tell me about her character? Not her backstory. Not what her fucking hair color is. About her as a character.
Well, seeing as you've only watched the first 5 minutes, I can only go up to the 5-minute mark of where you were at in that video. So the cowgirl is supposed to be this nice, comforting character to Goblin Slayer. They were childhood friends, and now he protects her.
You're going into the backstory.
This is important. This is important. Trust me. This all loops around. She's there to be a solid character for him. That's her defining trait. Is she's supposed to be nice and comforting. She's supposed to be a character that is easy to understand. She's supposed to be a very calm. She's supposed to be pretty much like a flotation device in the pool. She's supposed to be your security blanket. That's what her character trait is. The healer is not that same person. She is supposed to be a healer. She obviously is supposed to be someone that is, supposed to be for Great Mother Earth, but also caring to humans. Cowgirl is not like her because, like Cowgirl probably does care about humans, sure, but she doesn't care about humans the same way that the healer does. That's why each character is different. Goblin Slayer doesn't care about humans that way. He cares about killing goblins. Now, because we can't get into a deep look into what these characters are, especially from the first episode and 5 minutes from the second episode, this is just from my takeaway of it. And as you read through more of it, then you get to see their experiences and how that makes them grow. Because before you started watching Neon Genesis Evangelion, you didn't know anything about Shinji other than he's just a kid talking on a phone. Am I right?
Shinji actually gets a surprising amount of interesting characterization in the first episode.
But I'm saying in the first episode, you don't see anything before then other than he's talking on a phone and a lady drives up in a car after an explosion and she says to get in. That's all I'm saying, right? Like that happens in the first couple of minutes.
Yeah.
That's right. So we don't have a deep understanding of who Shinji is, and all we know is that he's just a whiny little kid in the first episode. So how is this any different from Goblin Slayer, where we don't have an understanding of, well, who are these characters? We just know that there's a lady here that, picked up this kid who we don't know if she's on his side. We don't know who any of these people are. So the first episode doesn't dictate the quality of an entire show.
No, I didn't say the first episode dictated. I didn't say the first episode dictated the quality of an entire show. I never said that. And
You know that Kimono Friends, one of the best shows that came out, I think it was last year, had a very low budget, but it's one of the best shows of last year and currently this year with the second season coming out. Now, if quality was really a problem and the CG was terrible, then why is that show rated so high?
I don't know. I didn't watch it. I assume people liked it, and that's why it's rated
people
high.
loved it. People loved that show. But my point is that sometimes you can, like Scratch Point was saying, there's people in the middle that are saying, yeah, it has its problems, but it's still decent. That's pretty much what everybody's take is, that if you have a functioning brain, it's like, yeah, this show has a lot of problems because, yeah, like the CG is a little off-putting and they don't have any names for the characters, but it's a really good watch. It's just mindless fun.
I don't have a problem with. I don't necessarily have a problem with the fact that the characters don't have names. Emblematic of a greater problem, which is the writer's seeming inability to create any kind of compelling character to the point where he can't even think of names.
Okay, so
My
what's
issue is not
so
they
what's
don't
the
have the-
best character? So if Neon Genesis is your favorite show,
Right.
why is Rey a blank slate for the first half of the entire series? She doesn't have any kind of depth whatsoever. She's just very quiet. She doesn't
Yeah.
talk,
Rey is
and she
by
only
miles
listens
the-
and she only listens to Shinji's father. That's all she
Yeah.
does. So
Rey is by miles the least interesting character in Ava for the vast majority of the show's run.
okay, but that can be applied to any character in Goblin Slayer, is what you're saying, because none of them have any distinguishing character traits. Do you see where I'm getting at here? Like, you're saying these characters, we don't know anything about who they are or their characteristics. Like, we can't tell them apart. But for a while, we can't tell anybody in Neon Genesis Evangelion apart until a couple of episodes later, or until we establish who they are. Like, we just, like, Asuka's just a pain in the ass. And then I can go to Goblin Slayer and be like, oh, Cowgirl's really nice and she has a great body. Like, Asuka's a redhead who just happens to be very tsundere. Oh, well, the healer is just a cute little child that we need to have protected. You see my point?
No, not really.
Here, let me simplify it a little bit more. Let me break it down just a little bit further here. So, I could put any of the characters from Goblin Slayer and write about 2 or 3 sentences about them, and I could do the same for any character in Neon Genesis Evangelion. But if we're watching their introductions or the first episode of any of those shows, I can't tell you anything about them. Because you need time to establish a character. So if we're going based off of the first episode, then the first episode doesn't give me enough information other than, oh, we're seeing this happen through the scope of the healer who's completely defenseless and she's new to this.
Okay,
Shinji is completely wet behind the ears and he doesn't know how to pilot this robot, and everyone's getting the fucking robot, Shinji. Same thing, really.
I'm confused. Do you actually think that the characterization of the characters in the first episode of Goblin Slayer is about the same quantity as the characterization of the characters in the first episode of Evangelion?
Yes, I truly think so, because you don't know anything about any of these characters when they
it's not
when he's talking on the phone and he's being awkward on the phone. You don't know who he is and you don't know what's going on. The same thing with Goblin Slayer. You're like, oh, who's this girl in a cave? Why is there a guy walking towards her? It's the same thing.
By the end of the first episode, you absolutely you know an awful lot about Shinji.
We know a lot about Goblin Slayer. He loves killing goblins.
Right, yeah. You know everything there is to know about Goblin Slayer, which is that he loves killing goblins.
So I'm not seeing where this is a downside, because if we know that Goblin Slayer is an adventurer that is silver ranked and that he kills goblins and that's all he does, and we know that by the end of the first episode that Shinji just cries a lot and refuses to get to the robot until he's pushed. When push comes to shove, that's when he does. How is that any different? Because we got information about these characters.
Shinji isn't just a crybaby that.
Yeah, until later on in the series, but we're going based off of first episodes here.
No,
Don't,
from the
don't worry
first
about that.
episode, you know more about Shinji.
Okay, what do I know about Shinji then?
You know that he has a strange relationship with his father. You know
Oh,
that
okay,
he
but
is
when
fundamentally
does that
a.
establish though?
It's shown. It is shown when you see the letter from his father that's been torn up and sellotaped back together. You know that he is a fundamentally brave person because he has returned to this shithole city and to meet with a stranger so that he has a chance of uniting with his father. You know
Okay.
that he is a scared person, right? And his uh, he's a scared young boy because it's shown quite explicitly several times. You see a lot of Shinji, and you see a lot of how he makes his decisions. You actually learn a surprising amount about the main character, and not only do you learn a decent amount about him, but you see. I think this critic didn't even watch Shinji. Good fucking name. You see that there's potential for even more depth there. You don't see that.
Okay, let me correct you here because I've watched the first episode a couple of times because I watched it and I enjoyed it so much that I watched it 3 times, but I had to watch it a fourth time to make a video that I made about it. But so we established that Shinji is all of these things, but we can establish the same thing about Goblin Slayer besides just killing goblins. Okay, so we know that he likes to kill goblins. Sure, that's just a very surface level observation. But when he first shows up and he's telling the healer about everything of why they were ambushed, what exactly happened, and oh, well, this is his weapon. It's too long of a sword. You're in a small cave. They know that. Like, they know exactly how small a cave is. That's why he doesn't wear long weapons. He doesn't use them. He says, oh, when you're in a cave, the fire only lights up this part of the cave. That's why they waited around this one corner so that way they could ambush you. The goblins aren't very smart, but they're not stupid either. He knows that there's power in numbers. So as you can tell from just the way that he's constructing this game plan in his brain, he already knows exactly how to kill goblins and he knows how they operate. So he has a far extensive knowledge of goblins. So that means that he's been in a lot of goblin fights, right?
Right.
The
Yeah.
same thing could be about Shinji is that he's awkward and that he's trying to please his father in the regards that he wants his acceptance. And that's all we really get from the first episode is that why don't you ever see me? Why do I never see you kind of thing. We get that. But Goblin Slayer knows how to kill goblins, right? He knows that he's been in all of these battles. We know that he's someone that's experienced in it. That's why he came in there. He came prepared. He had some gasoline from an alchemist. He's talked about things that are in the world. So we know what Goblin Slayer. We know who he is.
So
We
you're
know
saying,
what he's done.
so you're saying we know more about Goblin Slayer than just the.
No, I'm saying we know about the same thing. We know the same things about Shinji and Goblin Slayer.
Wait, Shinji likes to kill goblins?
Sure, his goblins being the angels, he loves killing them. At one point, I'm pretty sure later on in the series, he goes insane and he starts to kill a lot of them, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. He gets to a point where he's kind of like Spider-Man 3 in it up a little bit, and he starts to like get a kick out of it. So I'm saying, so all of these arguments that you're having, I'm just not understanding. Like they're parallels between the two things because you're saying that Goblin Slayer has a lot of issues in the first episode. Okay, fine. What are those issues? And then you're listing them to me. And besides the points that you've made about cinematography and the CG, fine, I get behind those. But everything else, they are fundamentally the same things as Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Wait, sorry. So you don't think that anything technical differentiates Ava or Goblin Slayer? I,
This is kind of like Michael Jordan versus LeBron James kind of argument, because Evangelion came out in 1996, and I'm not a historian, but back in the 90s there was a lot of production value put into a lot of high budget shows, being the Neon Genesis Evangelion for that prime example. They spent a lot of time on cinematography, and they spent a lot of time making small details. Goblin Slayer is a current year anime, and that anime snob, rest his soul, he's still alive. He does not like modern anime, and I understand his points for why he doesn't. It's because everything is being outsourced, and it's being made in a very unique, and not in a good way, like unique way, where it's just not as detailed and there's not as much information put into each line that's being drawn, whereas Neon Genesis has that. Now, there's quality issues, sure, but people can overlook all of those things to get to the core of what they want. They want a guy that is killing goblins, and they want to see where this story takes them. They're just sitting on the couch, and they're not changing the channel. They just want to see where this endeavor is going to lead them. Now, I mean, if we're trying to compare those two because of when they were made, sure, Neon Genesis will have the high ground as far as quality goes. Anyways, it's just made in a better time period where people spent a lot of time making things. Cowboy Bebop is one of those examples. It's still years ahead of the competition. It's a better animated show than Goblin Slayer is, but Goblin Slayer for what it is in current year is still decent. I'm not saying it's the best show out there. Nothing like there's not a best show in my opinion. I just happen to like them based on the things I see around me, and they will change as the world does. But all I'm simply saying is we're trying to compare these two shows as though they are Michael Jordan and LeBron James, where people are like, is Michael Jordan the best basketball player, or is LeBron James? Michael Jordan has more rings than LeBron James. Yeah, that's true. But LeBron James is, not many championships as he has, is still a great player in this current age. Now, that won't last for very long, but he's still a young player. I don't know much about the basketballs, but I can tell you that this is the exact same argument.
it, I'm okay. Seriously, I am utterly bemused about what you're even talking about. Um, it seems like I'm not even sure what your point is.
My point is that you're saying that there's issues with the show, but you've only
Yeah.
given me at least two valid ones, being the production quality. And I already said that the production quality is the one thing that you can get away with, because it has CG that's not very good. I don't think it's very great. I think it's, they could use some work, or they just should take it out immediately and just replace it with the traditional, like, actual animation that they have instead of that. But besides that, there's nothing that's fundamentally different.
Of course, there are things that are fundamentally different.
In what way? So in the first episode, because this is what we're focusing on, the first episode, what
Right.
exactly are we trying to get at here?
What are you trying to get at?
Well, you're saying that the
you're
show
saying
is bad. I'm just going
I'm
based
saying
off
that
of
the
the
first
intel that I
episode-
have. Are you there?
Yeah.
So so besides the production quality and the characters that we've already established are just like that, what other issues did you have with Goblin Slayer?
Okay, so there's a lot of different parts of production quality, right?
Yeah,
It's
we
not
already
just some-
established that there's a big difference between what we've established between those two shows, because I'm trying to make you understand that you have a favorite show, which is Neon Genesis, which was made in a different time. I get it.
Right.
But for between those two shows, if we're trying to make the argument of this is bad because of this, then I can point to another show that's made in modern year and say, well, this show is bad because it doesn't do this right either. Now, if we're going based off of the production value, we've already said, yeah, it's not very good, and I can let you get away with it. That's one thing that we can agree on. Let's just agree on that point, and then we can agree to disagree on everything else. So besides those things,
Besides that it looks like shit and sounds like shit, what other anime ruining problems does it have, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Why does it need any extra problems if it looks and sounds like shit?
Because, like I said earlier, Kimono Friends looks awful, but it is one of the best shows of last year. It came out of nowhere with awful CG. It has zero production value, but it beat out shows like Attack on Titan season 2. So quality in this respect doesn't mean anything.
Well, no, of course it does. Is thinking a show is fucking hideous not a valid enough reason to dislike it?
Well, Goblin Slayer is definitely better looking than Berserk 2016.
Right. Why are we talking about Berserk 2016?
I'm just saying, because we're on the topic of how things are supposed to be, power scaled and whatnot, and how they look. So I'm just saying, with production value and the quality, it's better than this one is. It's better than this other show is, right?
Yeah, sure.
So
that's not relevant. Just because another show looks worse doesn't mean that.
Wait, hold on a second. You guys talking about looks as in actual art?
Yeah.
Well, what is the point of even doing that though? Because I mean, that's like saying old school Nintendo games look like shit in current year, so they're terrible now. People still enjoy retro games. What is the purpose? Obviously, if you make those kind of comparisons.
Isn't an old school game though. It's a current year anime, and it should look.
Wait, okay. But why? No. People still make retro games in 2018. What
There's a fundamental difference between games and an anime.
Okay, now let me throw this at you, because since we're on the topic of things that can't look old and be new at the same time, have you heard of Captain Tsubasa before?
Yes.
So Captain Tsubasa is it's an old manga that used to premiere back in the 1980s. It was 1981, as a matter of fact. So they came out with a new anime adaptation just earlier this year in April. And it looks phenomenal because they kept the exact same art style as they did from the 80s. So I'm not understanding why something can't look old or pay homage to something that is old. Like, I'm not saying that Goblin Slayer is old. I'm saying if quality is going to be based on the artwork, visually pleasing to the eye can be subjective. So I can understand if you just don't like because the art looks very generic and bland, but to me, that doesn't really bother me or anybody else that I can really find.
Then that's good for you. I'm arguing. I came onto this podcast to talk about why people don't like Goblin Slayer and how I thought Scratch's video was misrepresenting a lot of the issues that people took.
My video represented the issues that I saw people having with it perfectly. I mean,
I'm not having a go at you. I'm saying that's the.
No, I understand. I understand, but I still don't really understand how you can say you thought I was misrepresenting the issues that people had with it when I put literally in the video the screen captures of what the people were saying and responded specifically to those people. Other people out there probably said a ton of other shit. I can't make a 5,000-hour-long video responding to every single bit of criticism. I responded to the criticism that I thought was foolish.
Okay.
Now, let me ask this. So what exactly is... So I think what I'm getting out of you is that the main issue, besides what we've talked about for God knows how long, the issue that you're mainly having is the misrepresentation of what Scratchpoint was saying in his video, which was what exactly? That people were upset about the rape in the show?
No, that's not what I'm saying currently. But if the reason that I initially wanted to come and talk to Scratch was because I felt at the time like he was consciously misrepresenting a lot of legitimate criticisms that people had of the opening episode of Goblin Slayer, the sort of producer gotcha style shitpost video.
But name one fucking comment that was featured in the video that I misrepresented.
Sure, I can do that, but that's still not really relevant to that.
It's entirely relevant. If I'm misrepresenting something, there should be a...
through a sentence.
Here.
Well, I don't care. I don't care. I'm getting sick of this. We're shutting this down in about 10-15 minutes. Either get to the fucking point or I'm closing it out.
Okay, let me go ahead and say this.
Fuck, I've been patient for I don't know how long.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and just say this for the
record.
record.
You barely let me say a sentence without interrupting me.
I've barely let you say a sentence without interrupting. You fucking serious? We had like an hour of a fucking discussion.
Right.
Here, let me just tell you this. There are people that have tried to do what you're doing, and they have failed at it miserably. Nino and Pedantic Romantic, where they tried to do. Well, here, I'm being as generous as I can because I deal with this.
Please tell me. I don't need shit. What am I trying to do?
So you're talking about how the show or this video is misrepresenting what people are actually saying.
Misrepresenting comments that aren't even featured in the video, which makes no fucking sense.
Yeah. Well, okay, so like that's the thing. So if we're going based off of what people are saying on the internet, how is that misrepresenting? Now, given that there are dozens upon dozens of examples that I can find, even just without searching, which if you have, like, this is my take, is if you have to go searching for it, is it really even a controversy at all? That's kind of the standpoint that I'm on with that. But I can go onto my timeline, or at least back when it was still relevant, and find people that were legitimately upset because, oh, well, they have rape in the show. Please don't watch the show. It has rape in the first episode.
Some of those comments are in my video.
Yeah, and those people aren't, like, they're not, like, made up or fictional. They are very real, and I've seen them, which is when Pedantic Romantic made his video, and he was saying, oh, well, this rape is unneeded. No, they didn't show. First of all, it is rape, yes, but they did not show you the actual rape. What happened is they were giving you the shadowy effect. You know how they can't really show anything.
Heavily implied.
Television.
That's why I said it was heavily implied.
Now, with that being said, the manga shows way more than that. And if we're trying to get to that argument, that's neither here nor there. But I think that the point that you're trying to make is that Scratch Point was trying to be misrepresentative of comments, but there's no misrepresentation there because I've seen not just those comments, I've seen other ones, especially ones from Mother's Basement, where he's went on a tangent saying that this was written by a 14-year-old.
I'll be completely honest. I just wanted to make fun of Mother's Basement. I mean, that's it.
I mean, yeah, well, who doesn't, in current day? But it's things where I could have went down my timeline on Twitter and saw these things. There were people on Crunchyroll saying, wow, I didn't know that this first episode had rape in it. You should let people know. Like, it may not have been to the way that you would think that it's going to be written, but people were upset about it. Now, like I said, if you have to go searching for it, is it even really a controversy? I didn't have to search for it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have to search for it. The only reason I saw it was because it was up and down the timeline. It's not like I decided, hey, I'm going to go type in Goblin Slayer because I bet people are mad. At that point, I hadn't even got around to watching the first episode yet. Then I saw people complaining. Then I was like, oh, I was planning on watching this anyway because I had heard of the series previously. So then I went and watched the episode. Then based off of that, I collected the comments that I saw. I made the video. End of story. Now, find me the comment in the video that I have misrepresented. If there's no comment in the video that I misrepresented, then I didn't misrepresent anyone because it's not there.
Stop talking for like...
I'll talk whenever the fuck I want. It's my fucking show. Shut the fuck up and find the comment.
Answer my question. I'm going to talk over you like a baby boy.
You sound like a fucking cuck. Shut the fuck up.
Here's what I'll give you. So what's the comment? Can you just tell me the comment so that way I can go and confirm it?
He doesn't have one. He's fucking lying because his opening comment on the fucking video.
He was about to stop talking. I have to interrupt.
You didn't say anything, you fucking asshole.
You're like 6 years old, right? Jesus Christ. Are you mentally retarded?
Okay, autismo.
You're a special boy,
All right,
boy.
so there's not really a comment, is
There
there?
isn't. There isn't one.
Oh
Find
my
it.
God.
Shut the fuck up! You keep talking over me, you ass fuck! Fucking British cunt.
Oh shit, you got me, dude. Watch out.
Have a spot of tea, bitch.
Ooh, pain.
You sound like you
Right,
sat on a
so-
fucking crumpet. Find the comment.
Okay, yeah, I have it right here. I was about to say it like 6 fucking times, but you kept interrupting me.
Read it.
Right. Okay, it says, hi, I'm Scratch, and I'm a fucking bender.
Okay, Goblin Slayer Critic 69. Talking about edgy.
Yeah, what about it?
I mean, it's just hilarious.
Thank you.
Hey, Nathan, suck my dick.
Ooh, get him.
Yeah, so
He'll never fucking recover.
see, this isn't even my podcast, but honestly, this makes you look worse than it does me. So let me just understand this. So if you really do think the things that you're saying are true, this whole hour and a half or 2 hours or so that we've been going, you don't believe any of the things that you say, right?
Literally, right? I've been so patient with you fucks.
You've
I've
been
let-
patient, but yet you
let me
haven't.
finish.
You came on this fucking show and you didn't give me one comment.
Look, literally, I can't even finish one sentence without you screaming, right? You...
Because you're fucking stalling. Show me the comment.
No, I don't care anymore, right?
You don't care anymore because you don't have one.
I literally have it right.
Then
here,
read
but
it.
I just don't respect you enough, mate.
Nobody
You're like a
respects you, so
6-year-old.
read it.
You're like a 6-year-old.
Okay, coming from the guy that opened his comment on the video with, "This video is trash, WTF." Really?
It was a trash video, though. But let's be real. It was trash.
Okay, but that's,
But he didn't
that's
explain how. He
subjective.
didn't explain how. But yet I'm supposed to have all these logical points.
No, I don't think you do have any logic.
I said you expect me to. Listen carefully.
I don't expect you to have any logical points.
Okay, so let's take Scratch out of the equation here. So even at that point, I still came at you with logical facts that you can even wrap your head around.
And then
This
you
is what
kept
I-
talking. You just
but-
didn't stop, mate. You didn't know how to actually pause.
Why
and let
didn't
people
you?
respond.
Why didn't you say, "Hey, excuse me, can I
rambled on.
talk"?
You just kept rambling on.
Why didn't you
and
say,
going.
"Excuse me, can I talk"?
Because I was being polite.
That
I
is
will
being
stop.
polite.
Hey, I don't mind stopping to let you talk. I mean, your points were mute anyways. You haven't made one valid point, even in the time that you were saying, well, Shinji has this great character development. Yeah, so does Goblin Slayer. And then you
No,
stopped. And then I even had to wake you up. I said, hey, you still there, bud? So I think you're just trolling at this point. So I don't really have anything else.
I mean, this is the funny
Goblin
part.
Slayer
This is
has
the funny
great
part is
character
that you think that you're like doing this epic troll, but this is entertainment. This is funny.
I don't even think I'm I was just letting you guys talk.
Listen, you could have said "excuse me" if you had a point for Necro. But when he stopped talking, you shut down like Windows 7. You had nothing to say, and you're like, "I don't even know what you're talking about anymore."
Okay.
I mean, right now is prime time. You could read the comment anytime.
It's not gonna
I'm
happen.
not going to.
Yeah, because he doesn't have it.
Wrong again, buddy.
Well, show the proof, buddy.
Watch your own fucking video, maybe?
I'm the one that made it.
There's
I know everything that's in it.
Clearly fucking not.
Well, you haven't really presented
I've
your
forgotten
side of the
my argument
evidence.
multiple times. I had a response to something they were going to say, and then they just kept going. And I was like, fine, I won't interrupt them. I'll let them finish, right? And by the time they finally fucking finished, it was like, dude, I don't even know what kind of
It's
fuck-
called
I mean-
saying, "Excuse me, I have something to say." Like, why is that so hard?
It's not. I thought you were gonna actually make concise, smart points, but you just kept fucking rambling.
Right. I rambled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as
That's
bad
why
as
you had
Necro,
no
but,
counter.
like, yes. What are you fucking talking about?
You still haven't presented anything in the video that you supposedly took issue with.
I don't look. I've given up on this shit. because
Of
I
course
don't
you
know
have,
what
because
works
now
for
I'm
me.
asking you to do it.
Oh, no.
Literally, right? Oh my god.
It's
See,
mighty
complete
quiet
silence,
here.
no talking.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that concludes the stream, everyone. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, I guess
'Cause,
so.
I mean, there's nothing else here. I don't know what you were really expecting to accomplish out of this one.
It's fucking hilarious, dude.
I got me epic troll, mate. Yeah, I'm sure you did.
I
So,
wasn't trolling anyone. I was.
well, you
trying to have
haven't
a
presented
conversation,
anything.
but
I was even quiet enough to let you do it. Scratchpoint put himself
you
on mute.
literally didn't shut the fuck up. You just kept talking, right? So don't even. Oh man, imagine.
Do you have personal agency?
You would die if there was a fucking time limit on what you had to say. Like, Jesus.
Okay, this sounds like it's more about you than it is about me, because I've stopped multiple times. I don't mind letting people, express their anguish about Goblin Slayer, because it makes them shake in their boots, but you've not made any valid points. And even if I did stop, you didn't make anything that made sense, and then I corrected you.
What did you say that was a correction? Goblin Slayer has great character development?
I mean,
Because he
he did
does.
explain why he thought so, but you didn't say why you thought it was bad in response to that.
Because he didn't actually say anything.
That's
I mean, if it goes,
We
if it goes way over your head, sure.
know so much about Goblin Slayer, so much more than just he likes to kill goblins. We know that he's killed goblins. Oh, fucking brilliant.
Because that's how he's written. What's the problem? Shinji's written to be a little bitch until the last episode.
all right. Do you want to present the comment from the video or not? I mean, if you don't, then
Absolutely fucking not, mate.
okay, then we're done. Then we're done here. Then we're done here.
You-
Then we're done.
I could have got a nice early night tonight. I could have.
I know. You wasted your precious
wasted
time.
My fucking time.
Yeah, you wasted your time. Yeah, you wasted your own time, pal, because you could have showed the comment and you didn't show it.
All I wanted to do was to have a chat. Right. All I wanted to
We
do
were
was to
having a
fucking
chat. You just didn't
No, you
bring
were
any
having
information.
a fucking monologue. Fucking Hamlet. Okay. There was no fucking chat.
It's ironic that he's calling you Shakespearean, yet has to sit here and act all pretentious about an anime series.
I know it's not that deep, fam. It's really not. He just kills goblins.
Yeah, I know. He just kills goblins.
I mean, if you don't like it, that's fine. No one's forcing you to sit there and watch it.
Why the fuck did you? What do you think I'm here to do?
You
I
came
was
to
just-
his video and you said this video is bad, WTF, and then you came onto the podcast to show
Actually said
your side
trash.
of it. Oh, well, sorry, my misrepresentation. Sorry,
Yeah,
guys.
read my fucking comment, right, dude? Don't
All
even
right,
know the
hey.
fucking comment.
Don't worry, I get around to the internet a lot, so don't worry. I get called disingenuous all the time. But even then, that still doesn't make your point any more valid when you came to a podcast to then say your side of the story, and then you didn't. Here, if it makes you feel any better, I'll just leave until the whole thing is over.
Honestly, this whole thing fucking is over.
Oh, I know it is.
Nothing cussing out, kid.
Yeah, don't worry. You got that epic troll in. Real nice. So, I mean, is there any other points about why you hate Goblin Slayer other than it's edgy and you just agree with everybody in the hive mind like an NPC, or is that it?
Fuck, dude. In what?
Sorry, words escape you, don't they? Here, why don't you like a show?
I told you why I didn't like the show. Said
No, you didn't.
that's not a real reason.
No, I said I agree with you. I said
Technical
the
as-
production value is perfectly logical. I said I agree with you.
aspects aren't a legitimate reason to like a show.
What technical aspects? I already said that the quality of the show doesn't really make or break it for me. It doesn't break it for
Okay,
anybody
well-
else.
It does for lots of people. If a show looks and sounds like shit, it's going to ruin it for a lot of people. Just because it doesn't for you doesn't mean that it's not a valid criticism.
I didn't say it wasn't. I said it's subjective.
Yes, correct.
Okay,
It's all
go on.
fucking subjective.
Okay, but you are in the minority of people that think so, though.
Yes,
Okay, go on.
I have made my. I have said it is a tech disaster.
Okay, so then that brings me around to the question of why did you seek out a video to then say that Scratch Point's video is shit? I'm just trying to get the gauge of it, because if you think it's shit, then I can't stop you.
By YouTube.
Okay, so you could have chose to not click on it too.
Right? Okay. I could have done that.
There was nothing worth talking about in the video, but he showed up not only to comment multiple times in the comment section, but also show up for over an hour on a podcast, and then proceed not to point out anything in the actual video.
Like, if you think his video is shit, I mean, that's fine.
I'm fine with that too.
I like to have arguments that are actually like there in the moment. Like, if you're gonna come on here and say why it's shit, at least attack the video, not the show, because we already know you don't like the show. It's not for everybody anyways. I think I made that clear when I first got here, but you've made it a point to not provide any evidence for why you think Scratch Point's video is shit. Are you still there, bud, or is that a little too fast for you? Okay, well, all right. I guess that's about it then.
All right, well, is that it then, or what?
I guess so. He just broke down, and now he's gonna type out the epic troll on the Twitter.
What are you like, writing it in my comment section or something? Like, what the fuck?
I'm actually talking to my friends. So.
Okay, well, if you want to go, that's fine. I mean, if you're not going to point out, that whatever, but
it's nearly 1 a.m. and I have shit to do.
All right, well,
I'm a grown up, so.
Oh, okay. So you're the only one with shit to do. I see.
Did I say that?
Well, I mean, you're putting it in there as though it's some sort of dig. Nobody cares. Go do it then.
Jesus fucking Christ, dude. You're like a special.
All right, I'll see you later. I'll probably see you in my comments here soon.
A special kind of. I'm not going anywhere near your fucking channel, mate.
Oh, that's good.
You two are a special kind of stupid, and I'm
says the guy who can't explain his point.
I did.
You didn't. You did not. You never presented what was wrong with the video.
You done?
Hey, we've been done for the past 2 hours. I don't know where you've been.
Okay, sweet. Thanks for wasting my time, dudes.
Hey, not a problem. Oh, there he is. Now he's gone.
Fuck off. All right. Jesus Christ. Well, everybody, I don't know how much fun that was, but
that was fun for me.
I mean, I thought it was funny as fuck, but after a while, it got a little silly, repeating the same points over and over again. I really don't understand what the point of that was. You know what? Since we're here and we can waste about 5 more minutes, let's just look at his comments, because I want you to see.
Don't let me be disingenuous. I want to read them as they are.
Okay, so he started off 7 hours ago. This video is trash, WTF. So I just jokingly said this comment is trash, WTF. I don't know what I think he was talking to the other guy with the irony comment, so I'll just go. He said, in response to my mockery, he says, "Oh shit, I've been destroyed with facts and logic. I bet I'm going in your cringe compilation too." So right there you got a little bit of motivation. And I said, "Guess you lost the bet." And he's like, well, at least I don't make whiny YouTube videos about made-up outrage over a shitty cartoon. Made-up outrage when it's literally in the video. I just said another NPC with nothing of value to say. Shocking. He says, "Oof, no response at all," because apparently that wasn't a response. "Okie dokie, sorry for intruding on your echo chamber, big boy. By the way, NPC meme is fucking hilarious. I hope you people never stop using it." The echo chamber argument is so fucking tiresome. Like, I've never gone out of my way to cultivate any kind of quote-unquote community where everybody is forced to agree with me. In fact, if anything, I urge people to think for themselves, even if that means disagreeing with me. But anyway, let's go on. I said, "The best you have is I'm better than you and you're whining, neither of which have anything to do with the video in question." So he says, "Because your video is substanceless and crap, sorry to break it to you. If there was anything worth talking about, I wouldn't have mentioned it in my first comment, don't you think?" I think he meant would have, but he's a retard, so he fucked it up. So I said, "Given your comments here, no, I don't. If there was nothing worth talking about, you wouldn't have even attempted to comment in the first place. Your assertion is pathetic at best, pointing out and mocking the fact that people are offended over a fictional scene in a show that supposedly is crap isn't whining. nor is finishing out the video with a measured response as to why the scene works, precisely because of the disturbed reactions to it. Now, you don't have to like the video or anything I said in it, but misrepresenting for gotcha points is just lame and an easy way to make yourself feel superior. So then he goes on to say, what makes you think that I wouldn't have commented? You clearly feel capable of talking without being productive. I'm just entertaining myself. So apparently this video is trash is productive. For your information, not that you don't already know this, nobody was offended by the fact that a rape scene was in GS. Nobody likes Goblin Slayer because the opening episode was shit, that's all. The rape scene was bad, but not because it was a rape scene. I find it funny that you're criticizing me for misrepresenting what you say, but that's the entirety of your video. By the way, your assertion is pathetic at best, is copy, pasta, tier, shithousery. If you'd like, shoot me a DM with your Discord information, and I could try to explain my thoughts in greater detail through speech. I find talking in YouTube comment section to be tedious as it hurts my ickle-wickle thummies. What the fuck? Anyway, so I said, because you said there's nothing worth talking about, it makes no sense to comment on something if you don't feel it's worth the time, and now you're here elaborating on why you don't think, or why you didn't think it wasn't worth talking about. So clearly you thought you had something, but instead decided to oversimplify with false claims. The video was entertaining for me to make. The idea that no one was offended is absurd, especially considering there is documented proof right here in the video. Off the top of my head, I can think of 2 specific posts that were very clear about it. One saying it's never necessary, and the other, I would be fine with them chopping up the party without the rape. The rape scene was bad, I quoted him, and I said, and yet none of them featured here seem to be able to explain how. I find it weird that someone is expecting a good rape scene when the intent is to be vile and display the rapists as vile beings. The rest of it is just kind of stupid, so I left him my shit here, and then he said, I feel like showcasing tweets isn't a great representation of a general reaction, especially when most of them only have a couple of likes/retweets. The tweets that you mentioned in particular struck me personally as more individual troubles with the show, which I don't understand how that makes it matter less. Things that made them personally uncomfortable and dampened their personal viewing experience, rather than necessarily a general critique. Though I willingly admit the tweet saying it's never necessary is a bit wank. As a response to your claim that none of the people in the video seem to be able to explain how the rape scene was bad, I think it's unfair to expect them to justify their viewpoints in any great detail in the form of a tweet, given the pretty harsh character limit. So that makes no sense. I addressed this comment during the stream, so as you guys heard. So that was his big entrance.
It wasn't very flashy, but I guess.
I mean, you find me in this comment thread where he named a specific instance of me misrepresenting anything that I actually featured in the video. If anything, he misrepresented my video to try to have some sort of argument. I'm just going to check the comments section real quick here. Sorry. End it maybe a little bit earlier, in my opinion, next time. Yeah, I definitely will do that. Alright, so, I guess some of you guys are still here. I appreciate the perseverance. I know some of this was probably difficult to listen to.
I know, even from my end. And by the way, I do not think that they are fundamentally the same show. I mean, kind of, but like I said, it is.
Oh well, but
Michael Jordan versus LeBron James argument.
Well, at the very least, I understood what you were trying to say.
Well, if he's going to have these arguments about the show, then if I can counter them and he's not countering me from countering them, are they even points? It's like, oh, well, I hate this show because it's racist. Well, okay, well, why is it racist? And then he just folds like a house of cards. I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the whole thing didn't make any sense. Oh, is Jim's stream going? I guess I could. Let me see. I could snipe it for a sec, I guess. I don't think I'm going to do the whole thing, but... Oh, no, it's live in 71 minutes. Never mind. All right, guys. Well, I think we'll end it here so everybody has a break between streams. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. It was quite the Spurg Fest. But it's fun. It's fun to yell at people sometimes. So we have that. All right. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.